I'm not proud of it, but it had to be done. And someone had to do it, and it was us. Yes. Oh, God. Oh, God, yes. Welcome back to Is It Still Good? This is a show where we look back upon the culture of our youth. We take our rose-colored glasses off, we murder them, we set them on fire, and then later on they come back and murder our children. But that's okay because it's without those glasses that we look upon the things that we used to love and try to find out if they're still good. We're just two adult film students who hate being adults. I'm never growing up. God damn it. This is Bear Kennedy in Chicago. I've got an electric problem, so I'll be various stages of dark. And joining me as always,
Andrew Carter. I do not have an electric problem, but this room does get dark even with lights on at night. So throughout the cast, you'll see it start to come down a little shaded.
That's exciting.
On the video, very exciting. Yeah. What's also exciting is this is week 2 of our October Halloween extravaganza. Last week we did candy. And we both said they were no good, and I just had dinner, and guess what I polished it off with?
couple $100 grand.
No, Reese's, a Snickers, and peanut M&Ms. I'm really mad at myself.
But there was Reese's.
I don't know. It's a miracle. But I will say there were a couple days after we did our podcast last week where I couldn't even look at it without feeling sick. Like, it was like probably 5 days. Like, we did it, what was it, Tuesday maybe? And I couldn't look at it. I think it was probably like Sunday night. I was like, all right, I guess I can have some more.
I really haven't had some. I made some pumpkin cookies because I'm a basic bitch, and I think that kind of took me away from the candy to satisfy my sweet tooth. But yeah, I kind of got off of it. You know, we tore through some sweets that evening, and I'm not proud of it, but it had to be done. And someone had to do it, and it was us. So,
do you have a sweet tooth? Like, would you say that you have a very big sweet tooth?
Absolutely not. I have almost no sweet tooth. I am not super into sweets.
That's good. Weirdly enough. I feel like I do, but it's not it's not anything out of the ordinary or crazy. Like, I can not have dessert some nights, and then some nights I really want it, but it's very 50-50, I'd say.
I don't even drink that much pop. Like, I know people.
Oh, I never drink soda.
Yeah, I know people who just tear through even Diet Coke, which I cannot handle anything diet, so that's insane to me. But I don't have any kind of need to be putting fluids in me that aren't, filled with booze or just water.
Yeah, I have every once in a while I'll have a Coke with, like if I'm on set and we're shooting and like you got to stay awake because you know it's just like that. At that point you just need fuel because you're just moving and it's like pretty difficult sometimes. Zoe has Coke when she gets a migraine sometimes. She'll have a little can of Coke, and apparently it helps. I don't know how, but I imagine it would. But yeah, neither one of us are really big soda drinkers. Every once in a while, ginger ale. But ginger ale is kind of a different breed. But anyway, enough about the sweets. Let's get into the horror. This week we are discussing Wes Craven's New Nightmare. 26 years old tomorrow.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, October 14th, 1994 is when it came out. Same day as Pulp Fiction.
That's weird.
Yeah. I think it was the same day that Pulp Fiction might have been out limited for a little bit, but it was definitely the same day that Pulp Fiction went wide. That was the opening weekend.
Wow.
Bear, had you seen this movie before?
Yeah, it's been a long time, and I couldn't remember the end. To save my life. I very vividly remembered about the first half hour. So I must have seen that part of it a lot, but I couldn't remember probably from the halfway point on at all. But there's no way I haven't seen it. I think I've seen maybe not all, but most of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, but I am not by any means an expert. I'm not super well versed in that franchise, I would say. And
is
not
number
even that
3 as good as people say it is?
Dream Warriors? Number 3 is very good. Okay. Very good. Number 2
I've never seen it, but I heard it's good.
Not good.
Yeah.
And I remember most of the franchise being bad.
Yeah.
From there on.
When this came out, this was heralded as like a really not necessarily like a revival, but more of like a wow, this is like the best one since the original.
Yeah.
And basically everybody said like, except for number one and to an extent number three, every single one of these sequels has sucked.
Yeah, it just depends what you're into. I mean, just because they're bad, I would say doesn't mean don't watch them.
Sure.
You know, I like all of them. It's just that some of them are a little harder to get through than others. But it just depends on what you're into it for. You know,
Sure.
if Freddy is a character, when you get into deep numbered sequel territory, especially in horror, the monster becomes a main character. And even here, he's first billed over Heather Langenkamp, and that is insane to me. I mean,
Yeah.
Robert Englund's
It's
awesome.
I
love him.
Yeah, he's great, but it's her movie.
He's great. Yeah, she pulls a fucking Bruce Campbell here and just does a one-woman show through most of it.
Yeah.
You know, her and of course Miko Hughes are in quite a bit of it, but Freddy isn't in this movie a lot as a character, and Robert Englund plays himself as well, but isn't nearly in as much as this as old Heather is.
Yeah, I mean Heather, as I was watching it last night, I was like, wow, she is like getting her ass kicked in this movie in a good in a cool way. Of like she's obviously a badass, but she gets really brought to her knees quite a bit. Like
she does, yeah.
She gets cut, stabbed, thrown, punched. She has gray hair. Like it's insane how much she goes through. But yeah, it was pretty wild that Robert Englund got top billing over her. Maybe they had to do that for, I don't know, maybe it was his deal or something like that. But yeah, I had seen this movie for the first time actually last year. I had not.
Oh, really?
I hadn't seen it. I had seen the original Nightmare on Elm Street in college, and then last year, Zoe and I went to a rooftop screening of the original of Nightmare on Elm Street, and we loved it. You know, it's classic, a lot of fun. And then I don't know why I saw the poster for Wes Craven's New Nightmare, and I think I remember seeing the poster at my local video store.
Which poster? Because there's a couple.
The one that's like on iTunes, the one where it's like Freddy's face and he's kind of got the hand. It almost looks like it. Yeah, it's red. It almost looks like it might not be Freddy, but there was that one, and then there was the one where it was just like a black poster with the eyes.
Yeah, I think I remember that one.
I remember seeing one or both of those at my local video store when I was a kid, and I just remember it just stuck out to me, but I never saw the movie. And I was going for a walk with my buddy Adam, and he was like, "Oh, you should watch it. It's good." And then he told me how it was meta, and I had no idea.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh shit, really?" And that immediately intrigued me. I think I might have even gone home and like watched it that night because I was so taken with that premise, with that hook, that it's like they play themselves and Freddy like leaves the movie world and comes into the real world. Yeah, and I remember watching it last year, but it's funny watching it again last night. There were some things that I had forgotten, but the one thing I didn't forget, and that probably stuck out to me even more this time, is how fucking crazy Miko Hughes is.
And obviously I named myself after him in the Zoom meeting, but how do you feel about Miko Hughes? I'll tell you, I hated him. I've always hated him.
Yeah,
I hate him.
I really respect and admire his commitment because he is really committed. But I just feel like he goes from zero to batshit right away and stays that way the whole movie, that you're just like, who is this kid? What is going on? Like, what is happening to this kid?
Yes.
It's not very clear. Like, is he possessed by Freddy, or is he just a little bastard, or is he just obsessed with his mom and his movies? Is there like an Oedipus thing going on where he's watching his mom and there's just so much going on, not just in the movie, but with him specifically. So that's my take on it. I think so. You hate him.
I do. I hate him. I feel like I don't think he goes from 0 to 100. I think he just always starts at that level. I don't know what it is about him. It might be because I kind of looked like him when I was a child, but I always find his one performance that he can do is basically looking like he doesn't have a soul. like he's possessed. So he's
Yeah.
actually very well cast in this movie where he has to do a lot of sleepwalking
Yeah.
and kind of be affected. So I don't know that he even turns in a bad performance here. I just think I don't like him.
Yeah.
I always
would
think of
agree with
him
that.
as I always think of him as Gage Creed from the '89 Pet Cemetery. And at one point he's put in danger with a highway where a semi truck's coming at him, and I was like, this has to be a Gage Creed joke, right? Like he almost gets
That's
mowed
really
down
funny.
by a truck.
Wait
I'm
a
like,
minute.
we're doing Pet Cemetery here,
He's
right?
the little kid in the original Pet Cemetery, the little blonde kid.
He's a little kid who meets a truck and then hates Achilles tendons later.
Wow, dude! First of all, I had no idea. I've actually never seen the original Pet Cemetery, but my cousin told me because my cousin on my dad's side. The cousins on my dad's side are like at least 10 years older than me. Yeah. And she told me that when we were growing up, when I was like maybe 2 or 3, that they all thought I looked like that kid from Pet Cemetery.
Yeah.
And I had no idea that it was Miko Hughes, but now that I'm putting it together, yeah, that was definitely him.
I think I looked like him as well, but it could have just been the times. I mean, we probably both had a bowl cut and had that kind of shrunken, like a shrunken adult look that Miko Hughes kind of has.
Shrunken adult.
Yeah, like he looks like fully formed, but like they minimized him.
Yeah.
Somehow. So I don't know. I don't like him. He's also the kid in Kindergarten Cop.
Yeah.
Who says boys have a penis, girls have a vagina.
Yep.
So he's that kid just spitting truth.
He had some iconic. He was a part of some pretty like big things in the 90s. Not only that, he had some iconic lines. Yeah, he's a known entity.
I couldn't, for the life of me, think of his name when I was watching this movie. I was like, "Oh my god, it's a fucking kid from Pet Cemetery."
But you're right. He has that face. Like even last year when I watched it, I was like, "I have seen this kid." No question. Whether it's like in a commercial or something, you've seen that kid before.
Yeah, he's around. I think he's still working. I didn't look up a picture of what he looks like today, but I like briefly.
Oh, I did. He has a goatee. He looks.
Yeah.
He looks kind of still like a shrunken adult, but just like a larger shrunken adult. If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Yes.
But I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I definitely don't think he gave a bad performance, but it's more just like I can't. It kind of goes back to what we talked about a long time ago about like which actors do we like and not like, and I feel like I probably liked him a little bit. I probably disliked him a little bit less than you, but I still was not a fan.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he's doing a lot of like sleepwalking. Mm-hmm. He's doing the creepy kid thing. I think that's a hard performance to get out of a child, and he's kind of tailor-made to it. But for some reason, he always just bothers me.
One question I had for you was, and based on my research, it feels like this could be interpreted as such. Did you interpret this movie as a direct sequel to the original because it doesn't follow the same continuity? Or did you just interpret it as like just another nightmare? Because I've only seen the original and this one. I haven't seen any of the others.
Well, again, there are people who really, really love the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. I think that's awesome. I love those people. This is not my franchise. I'm an alien person. That, like, first and foremost, I can talk about all the stupid minutia on that, and also like Phantasm and Evil Dead. So this one to me is something I kind of enjoy at arm's distance. So my recollection is that the continuity isn't super front and center in a lot of the films. I believe because Heather Langenkamp comes back for 3, where she plays Nancy, and then I don't remember her being in any of the later ones, and so I don't know. I think it kind of is a direct sequel, to my knowledge. I mean, they do not really talk about the other films as far as plot. It's a meta movie, so there's a lot of things that I actually think all of this works in this film, where he actually addresses a lot of the criticism of the franchise. and horror movies and violent horror movies in particular, which I think is really cool. So they do talk about, like, there are fan interactions, and they are like, oh, everyone's pissed that they killed Freddy, which I think the last one was Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, I believe.
Yeah, I think it literally says it in the title.
And Wes Craven, who plays himself in the film, is also talking to Heather Langenkamp about playing Nancy one last time. So it is alluding to having been more than just the original film, but they do show clips of the original film. The themes are kind of the same. I mean, I think that with Miko Hughes, it is a little ambiguous what's happening to him. Is he possessed? Is he the conduit for this Freddy entity to come into the new world? That's a little vague. I think what it really is the continuation of the theme from the first film is bad shit your parents did will be visited upon the next generation. Right. So it's Heather's participation in the making of these movies that has consequences for her real life in ways she didn't imagine. And obviously it goes very far into the ridiculous by the time the movie's over, but I think that's fine. I mean, ultimately, for as much as people like the Nightmare on Elm Street saga and fans of it view it as being very creative and very out of the box, it is silly. Like, it is kind of ridiculous, and there are elements of it that are frankly hilarious sometimes. So you have these themes that are like very real, and they kind of they get pushed into the realm of being ridiculous. I think that's fine. I like the tone of it, but that's kind of where it goes. If that's how I took it. I don't know if you felt the same.
No, I felt the exact same, actually. It's funny because, and I think the reason I felt that way is because I think that the first movie has it's funny how this movie and it's funny how this movie is very meta, and it's a movie within a movie and all that. But if you watch the first film and you watch this one, the tone is very similar. This one might be a little darker just in terms of like Freddy's more sinister look. And actually it's been said that Freddy in this one is much closer to Wes Craven's original vision for him because he was more darker. He was scarier, more menacing.
Yes, I completely agree with that. He gets turned into a joke. He's saying funny lines. Right. Like I said, as an audience member, you're coming to the late sequels to kind of root for him to kill off people.
Right.
So he does morph over time. So it's nice to have him come back and be menacing and not like a joke. Like he's throwing out jokes like crazy during some of the
I know, and I like that scene where she's on the talk show with Sam Rubin and he does a send up and he's like, "Love you, babe, we'll do lunch." Like he's just basically making fun of that persona of him. And like as much as I would appreciate, usually like a villain with some sense of humor to him, I feel like Freddy is just inherently pretty fucking terrifying and pretty just like morbid. And so what I appreciated about this movie was that I would say if you had to ask me which one I thought was scarier, it's hard for me because I personally don't really get scared by these movies. I just, the two that I've seen, I haven't been that scared by them. I've been entertained, and I've definitely been like scared in a way of like, ooh, this is fun, but they don't really keep me up at night. I mean, the concept is genius. I think it's great.
It's great.
It's a great concept. I would probably say though that at least in this movie, Freddy's scarier, just visually. Like he looks more fucked up. He looks angrier, more evil. But back to the tone thing, I feel like there's a lot in this movie and in the original that feels tonally very similar. Whether it's, as you said, the moments that might make you laugh, whether it's like actually funny or out of discomfort. This didn't feel that tonally dissimilar to me from the original. And that's probably because Wes directed and wrote this one and the original. But one thing I also really appreciated was that this was totally a precursor to Scream.
Oh, this is like the warm-up round. Yeah.
Yeah, you can watch this movie and totally get like, okay, that's the guy. This guy is definitely going to direct Scream. And he didn't even write Scream. But you might imagine, I don't know if this is the case, but maybe Kevin Williamson watched this movie and like thought of Scream, because of it. I imagine he probably started writing it a little bit earlier because Scream only came out 2 years later.
Yeah.
But this is definitely a precursor in terms of the meta element and the self-awareness. And I just feel like he had his work cut out for him in this one. And I don't know about you, but as I was watching it, I was like, holy shit, there is a lot happening.
Oh.
Like, there's so much fucking going on.
First off, I saw the runtime was like an hour 50 or so, and I was like, holy shit, that's long.
It's too long. It's too long for sure.
And then even in the once you get out of that first scene, which is awesome, into
that opening is so
and I really remember that opening, and I know I watched this movie for the first time on cable way back, because I remember watching that opening, and there's no opening credits, and you're right into it.
No, yeah.
And it does pull back a layer where, you know, they're making a movie, it's real life, and then that's a nightmare, and then there's another, you know, she wakes up like twice. And I was like, what the fuck am I watching? Like, it really threw me off at the time, because I was probably a teenager.
Right.
I had no idea what the hell this was. I had to go like look it up on the TV guide, because, you know, I was just assumed there'd be a title card and I'd know what the fuck this was. Right. And that really confused me. And I love it here. And I love it in retrospect, because you've got the New Line Cinema logo opening it up, which you're like, all right, you know, the sign of 90s quality from the rental bin.
Right.
But once you get out of that initial kind of scare and you're in her home, the breakneck pace of the editing here is crazy. There is shit happening left and right. The phone's fucking ringing, people showing up at the doorbell, husbands packing and leaving. Like, it is crazy.
Like
how much
5 earthquakes.
Yes, there are like 5 fucking earthquakes. It just never slows down, and it was like, what the fuck? And there were some really, really bad cuts that bothered me. Like, some of the editing, and especially in like the first 40 minutes, like, oh, that's weird. But
yeah,
it maybe feels like they shot a lot of shit and noticed after the fact, we got to get through this quickly because things are dragging in the home, because it's a little choppy to get out of that initial house set.
There's that first nightmare, and then there's the earthquake, and then I think there's even another earthquake, and then the kid is, you know, screaming about something, and the babysitter shows up, then the phone's ringing, and it's a stalker, and then the phone rings again, and it's the limo driver, and you're like, whoa, what the fuck is going on? And then the husband,
rapid fire.
Yeah, I gotta leave and go on this movie. But it's funny, they were shooting this during the Northridge earthquake in '94, so that some of that footage of the destruction is real. They just went out and got that footage.
From the date, I thought that might be the case.
I gotta say, I mean, like, obviously what happened is horrible and devastating, but at the same time, like, that's some fucking shit dumb luck.
That is. Well, and
that he wrote that. Yeah, kind of, right. But then he wrote that, and they were.
And then it never gets resolved.
No,
it's kind of implied that other people aren't experiencing the earthquakes, and then never given an explanation.
I think that's got to be what it is. I think it's more specific to. But here's the thing: there's a part of me that's like, yeah, it's more specific to Heather, but at the same time, why show the footage of the other places around the city destroyed?
I don't know. I couldn't reconcile that.
Yeah,
I don't know,
because the nurses, the scene where she's like, it just happened, and they're like,
what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, they're like, we missed that over here or something. But yeah, I mean, the whole notion of like so much going on and the meta thing, I feel like I've seen things that are very meta that are probably a lot more convoluted, and I have to say this didn't feel convoluted. It did feel like a lot was going on, but for the most part I was able to follow it. Like, I don't think I was lost. I don't think I was ever like, what the fuck's happening, what no. And I did, again, just the hook alone, that they're playing themselves, and that there's something very tickling about, like, you know, let's haunt the people that make the horror movies.
Yeah.
That's a really fun, interesting idea. And I like that the New Line execs actually played themselves. And
I like that. And
that was cool.
Getting Wes Craven to play himself in the movie that he's written and directed, I feel like could have gone super wrong. And he's actually pretty good. And
yeah, that scene with them might be one of my favorites, if not my favorite in the movie.
He seemed like, I don't know that he's a good actor. I suspect he's not, but I do also suspect that he kind of found Heather Langenkamp when she was a student at Stanford and cast her in the original movie, kind of outside of Hollywood, and I'm sure he has a real affection for her, and I don't think he's acting in that scene. I think he just just likes her.
Yeah, I think there's a fatherly aspect to it.
Yeah, and it comes
he's
through.
Looking out for her. Yeah, he's looking out for her for sure.
I saw there was a review that said that it would have been better. Let me find it. This would have been a better film if it was about the haunting of a
movie
set. And I was like, that fuck no, that would suck.
Yeah,
this
Owen Gleiberman wrote that.
I was like scrolling to find it. That's bullshit. I completely disagree with that.
Yeah,
I think that would be super fucking boring. I think that would really make it feel cheap, because how long are you gonna milk that?
I mean, how big is a fucking movie set?
What? That's the dumbest shit. That's like that premise reeks of we're out of ideas. This one is more, how can we respond to some of the real criticism of this franchise, plus take an introspective look at something that we've created that we're sometimes accused of harming people with.
Right.
Like the main doctor is always accusing Heather of, oh, did you let your son watch your movies?
Yeah, and then she finally is like, so you have let him see these.
And it's like,
and then basically she says, and it's funny, she doesn't even really admit to it. She just says every kid knows who Freddy is,
which is funny.
It's funny, and it's also true. I mean, like, there's that whole thing in the first movie, those kids like 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. They all know the song.
Yeah.
So
I just thought that was a bullshit criticism, especially like with the added kind of layer that Wes Craven gives it, which is, why tell a horror story? Why tell a story that's violent and where people die? And maybe something that could be negative. And his answer for that is basically, look, if we don't tell these stories and share them and have the catharsis of having an experience with them, and we just try to lock them away, we're never going to deal with this horror and this fear that we have. It's going to come back and fuck with us. That's basically what this whole movie is. If you don't keep these things alive, they're going to harm you, actually. And I like that. I like that he goes that direction with it, instead of it being what you think it's going to be in that first 7 minutes, a haunted film set.
Right. Basically what it sounds like you're saying is that it's more about like the people dealing with making these movies.
Yeah, because
that's what this is about.
Even that last note he has on the script in the last scene is, hey, thanks for having the courage to play Nancy one more time. Like, oh, thanks for telling this story again. Things might have gotten out of hand, but let's keep it alive and tell it so people can have those feelings and enjoy it and walk away from it and experience that feeling and then have it be done. And that's, to me, that's what makes horror movies great. You can be scared, you can see some negative shit, not like it, but experience it all, get it, kind of have it flow through you, and then have that experience close and walk away. That's always what I like about horror movies. I think
I do too, but I guess I'm wondering, like, what is the criticism that these movies got?
Well, they're too violent. They're not for kids. They're marketed towards children, starring children. You got a foul-mouthed villain murdering people. You're glorifying those acts by having him kind of be the star. It's tough to think of a allegory now, but I think the uproar with Cuties would be kind of a recent example of overly conservative people criticizing something that they've probably never watched, and maybe for reasons that are completely non-existent within the film. In Cutie's case,
I saw Cuties.
What are you doing? I did too.
I saw it at Sundance, and it's like, I do not understand why people are so up in arms about that.
I can't even tell you how many independent French films I've watched that are the exact same thing as Cuties. I liked it, but I've watched a lot of French movies that are exactly like that, and this is not a new experience. So I super don't understand the outrage.
First of all, I thought the movie was fine. Personally, I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I thought it was fine. But I definitely didn't understand the uproar. And there was no uproar at Sundance. Like, no one at the festival was saying a word about, oh, that was a little it's like the whole criticism of people saying it's sexualizing children or whatever. That's the director's point of showing that so people know not to do that, if that makes any sense.
I get it. Well, it's the thing that people can't deal with a lot, which is that you, by showing something in a film, it is not taking the side of the thing you're showing. You don't always endorse what you're showing.
Yeah.
Sometimes audiences really can't deal with that.
Yeah, it's like if there's a really despicable character in a movie, and some people are like, oh, well, that must be what the filmmakers are like, and it's like, no, it's like people who watch Django Unchained and they're like, well, Tarantino's a racist, and it's like, well, why wouldn't you think why wouldn't you think he was Django? You know, like, think about how that movie ends. Like, think about who the hero is. He fucking kills everybody.
I mean, it's always frustrating when people have that take. Like, people watch Mad Men and see it as a show about how awesome it is to be Don Draper, and that is not the show.
Yeah, that is not the show.
That's not what that show's about. And people have the same thing with, violent movies or other things that they view as being against some moral value that they hold.
But
usually people don't watch the film and they levy that criticism, and I think that's
but people that do that and watch something like Mad Men and are like, oh, Don Draper's the man, they're either stupid or they're just not getting it at all.
Yeah.
Like, they're either really dumb or they're just reading into it completely wrong.
Yeah.
It's like people who watch Entourage and think like, oh, that's, like who watch Entourage and like, watch Ari and think like, yeah, that's how you should talk to your employees. And it's like, no, dude, like, it's not okay at all. Like,
no.
You can watch him and laugh at him, but you should also have the wherewithal to be like, yeah, you can't say that shit.
Yeah, just depicting it is not an endorsement. I don't,
not at all.
And I'm going to go even farther. I think that with things dominating popular culture now, like Marvel movies, where there's very, very little doubt as to who is the good and bad guy there, and where the depicting of the main character is almost always an endorsement of their actions in an extreme way, that leaves very little room for an audience to experience something where that's not the case.
Right.
And I think that's I think we're going to be dealing with that for a long time.
So are you saying that like Marvel movies don't, like, they take such a clear stance that it's not interesting? Or I just want to make sure I'm following you right.
It's for children, right? It's for children.
Yeah.
So I'm sure someone's going to yell at me for saying that, but the movies are for children. So there's not a lot of moral ambiguity on what the main characters are doing.
Right.
Captain America doesn't rape a woman, and then go save the world. And then you as the viewer has to reconcile with the mentality of someone who could commit a rape and then go do something for other people.
Right.
You're never asked to deal with the mentality of the person that would be in a position to be Captain America in the first place, right? It's just they're always the good guy. They always are altruistic.
Yeah, that's why I like Nolan's Batman movies way more. Than the Marvel movies, because I think that, I mean, like, there's Batman's not raping anybody in the movies.
No,
but he does things that are questionable, and I think he deals with some shame and some guilt, and I think there are elements of those movies that are looked at as like, what does it mean to be a hero, and like, what does that even work? Even Raimi's first two Spider-Man movies deal with that a little bit. My biggest issue with the Marvel movies, and they're fine. Like, I've watched a bunch of them and enjoyed them. Some of them I haven't enjoyed, but none of them except for probably the first Iron Man have stayed with me. And I've said that before and I'll say it again. But the reason the first Iron Man stayed with me, I think, is because it kind of dealt with what we're talking about. Tony Stark was a bit of a, he was a bit of a playboy and a womanizer, and he was glib, and he was, like selling, he was an arms dealer. And then he learns like, oh shit, no, I have to be on the other side of this. And that's kind of a moral dilemma that's interesting. And I feel like the Marvel movies now, you're right. It's like there's no ambiguity as to, who's right and who's wrong. The closest was probably that movie was Captain America Civil War, when it's like Captain America versus Iron Man. Where they both have like these two things. But either way, those movies don't, it's weird to say they don't do it for me, because like they're well done. And like I definitely I really like Black Panther, and
they're almost uniformly well executed. But
they're really well done movies. But they just I'm with you on that one. But anyway, back to Nightmare. It's like
that gets pretty far from Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah,
I mean,
but I find it surprising that people are so deeply critical of a movie where a guy kills people in their sleep.
Well, it's like, critical in what way? I mean, like the outrage over it, because this was in the 80s and even into the 90s, where violence in movies was a big deal.
That's what I mean.
And the bar for that was much, much lower than it is now. Because even on network TV, you can see some good blood and guts. But
that's true.
When the first Nightmare on Elm Street, I was trying to look it up. I don't know if it was this movie or another of Wes Craven's movies I was looking at, but he had a reputation of making like, violent horror films, and had to resubmit, multiple times to the MPAA to get it down to an R from an X, or an NC-17. Wow. So that's kind of what he was up against, just to tell him a tale about a guy who kills you, from your nightmares. So
right.
I think it's tough to even get into the mentality of what it was like in the 80s, when like Tipper Gore was having congressional hearings with Kiss and like, Rat about the content of music lyrics, or oh God, what was it? Wasp, because Wasp had a song that was like, I want to fuck or something.
Tipper Gore had meetings with them.
Tipper Gore came up with the parental advisory sticker. That was a...
Wow, I never knew that.
That was because Tipper Gore's daughter came home with I believe it was a Wasp album, and I'm probably getting this wrong, but one of the songs was something, I think it was... it was either... It had fuck in the title. I think it was like fuck like a horse or something. But she heard the lyrics and she got outraged and decided to do something about it. So that's the cultural conservative nature of media from the time, certainly right. The original Nightmare and New Nightmare as well.
Fuck like a horse. That's incredible.
That's not it. I actually think it's fuck like a beast, if I'm remembering right.
Either way, that's crazy. If it was fuck like a horse, that would be incredible.
There's no way it's fuck like a horse. That's out of my mind. I'm pretty sure it's fuck like a beast. I wish it was as well.
Yeah, but anyway, as we wrap up, what's your final thoughts and verdict as to the movie? Did you watch it more than once?
I didn't get the chance to watch it more than once. I wanted to. I just kind of ran out of time. But I really enjoyed it. There was some stuff, like I said, the pace of the editing, crazy. Heather Langenkamp picks up a limp at one point, which is never explained. I believe it's from catching Nico Hughes falling off the playground. But
I noticed that too. But I thought she got like. But do you remember in the scene where she's like in her home and then like Freddy breaks out of the closet and throws her around?
Best scene in the movie.
It's a great
by
scene.
far the best scene in the movie. That has the best line reading from Robert Englund when he comes out of the closet. Miss me.
Yeah, miss me. Yeah.
Wonderful. It's
amazing. But I think that's where it happens. I think he throws her into the bed or something, or maybe she falls down the stairs.
There's a plant. And he starts shredding the plant, and fucking plant goes everywhere, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
But I just occurred to me that she had a limp without any obvious leg trauma. which wasn't a huge deal, but she is visibly limping through a lot of the film.
But I think it's because he threw her around in the bedroom. That's what I think, at least. Like
you could be right. But I agree. I love Freddy's look. I love Robert Englund playing himself and Freddy.
I like that there's something up with him. You're not quite sure. Like, okay, is this guy good? And then, of course, when he's like, yeah, tomorrow, yeah. And then when she calls and he's like, we'll be out of town for a couple of days. And then it's very clear it's because it's because Freddy's, it's Freddy's haunting him.
That was my only disappointment was I wish that Freddy would have killed him. 'Cause I thought that would have been a given, and it doesn't happen.
Yeah, that would have been crazy.
So that was kind of a letdown because I was kind of looking forward to that. But I like Freddy's look. He looks, actually, to me, he looked a little dry, which was a little weird. Like, I liked the mask and the makeup, but they didn't load him up with Methicil like they do sometimes.
I know what you mean.
Which is Methicil is essentially a goo that they use for special effects. So he doesn't have like a wet sheen, which sometimes makes things look a little more lifelike. Yeah. He looks very dry. Yeah. Which was a little
looks
odd.
A little pinker.
Yeah, definitely
than normal.
He doesn't look rubbery. Like it looks cool, but it stood out to me that how dry he looked.
Yeah, that is funny.
But I liked a lot of the effects. The kills weren't super graphic. No. I like how much fake blood they're using. But even the babysitter who gets she gets like a classic Freddy death.
Oh yeah, that's like a throwback to the scene in the first movie when the girl's on the
which I enjoyed quite a bit.
That scene in the first movie is much more graphic than the babysitter death here.
Yes, absolutely. But there's not a ton of like showing people getting fucked up. It's kind of implied, which is fine.
Yeah.
And I did enjoy the husband's death. I couldn't believe that he was the first casualty. In real life anyway. And that guy's name.
Also, how long is that drive from Palm Springs?
He said 3 hours.
Yeah, he's like, I'll be here in 3 hours, number one. And he leaves when it's light out. And then all of a sudden it's like dark out, but it says it's 7:48, and he's like, oh. So I guess you have to assume that maybe he was up at like 3 o'clock in the morning to get there.
I guess.
Either way.
But that guy's name is David Newsom, and to me, he looks like if we were creating Daniel Bruhl out of a laboratory, he would be like an early version that was discarded. That's all I could think about.
Not there yet. Yeah.
We're not quite there. Let this one into the wild.
Let's get there.
We'll keep going.
No, I don't disagree with you on that for sure. But anyway, yeah. So your verdict is
it's still good. Like some of the effects have aged poorly. Some of the CGI is bad. There's some green screen shit that is crazy bad.
Yeah, the highway scene in particular,
crazy bad,
looks ridiculous.
But I don't have a problem with that. Heather Langenkamp carries it. She's super hot in this. It's unbelievable how
she's very attractive, and she's also just like a bad, like again, she like really carries the movie.
Totally. And Freddy is absent for a lot of it, but when he shows up, he's great. And overall, it's good. I mean, I still liked it. I think it's still good. I was watching this with Jackie, and she was kind of half watching it, and I don't think she's ever seen any of the Nightmare movies. And if you're going into this and you haven't seen any of them, this is going to be an insane movie.
Yeah, this is a lot.
This has some serious sequel energy, and I don't think that's bad. This is like the 8th or 9th entry, but there is no backstory for Freddy. It is leaning on you being very familiar with a lot of the characters, kind of including John Saxon, who shows up and is great.
Love him.
And
rest in peace. He died last year.
I saw that. Really bummed me out.
Yeah, he's great.
But it does lean on some of the tropes that have been established in the franchise, like people not really realizing they're dreaming until they figure it out, and then they're able to deal with it. But to me, that all worked. My only other gripe, which isn't even a problem I have, but did you notice every time they wake up, it is the middle of the day? Like they're never waking up in like dawn.
In the morning.
It is so fucking bright outside every time, which I really appreciated because I wake up.
That is funny.
As well. Like the kid's like having a nightmare. He wakes up.
It's 1 o'clock.
Couldn't be brighter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, we gotta have lunch. Yeah.
It's like
We miss lunch
every
again.
time.
Yeah.
So I thought that was funny. So the stuff, I'm sure, if that kind of thing really bothers you, relax. That kind of stuff just makes me laugh more than anything.
Sure.
But yeah, this movie's still good. It's a little hidden gem.
Yeah.
I feel like it's not talked about. Certainly not as something that we remember from 1994.
Yeah.
But this is a very worthy entry in the series. And if you're looking for something to watch, this is streaming nowhere, so you're gonna have to buy it.
I know. Or you could rent it, I think, for $2 or buy it for $5. And I just figure like, yeah, it's like, why not? It holds up. It's enjoyable. You're probably going to want to watch it every Halloween. I agree with you. I definitely think it's still good. I think my criticisms are that there's a little too much going on and it's a little too long. But other than that, I really appreciated the meta aspect. I thought it was handled very well. I thought the themes were interesting. And I thought it all tracked and made sense, especially for a meta movie. It didn't feel esoteric. It felt like it was easily understood.
No one's winking at the camera, really.
Right,
it is played super, super straight to its benefit. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I agree. And what's interesting is that you say, like, I couldn't find a ton about it, like, in terms of appreciation things. There were a few articles that were like, this movie is definitely like, it definitely holds up, and it's a great movie that you don't remember. It's actually Robert Englund's favorite of the Nightmare series.
He's great in it,
which I thought was really cool that it holds up for him. And I think Heather Langenkamp, I'm not sure if it's like her favorite, but she loves it too. And it was interesting that it got out of like this was the 7th entry, and from this, between number 1 and this one, like none of them, maybe number 3, I guess, but none of them really got good reviews, but they all made way more money than this one. This was the lowest grossing entry in the series.
Which blows my mind because this is
I'm shocked.
This is a better film. I know it's probably,
I agree.
Maybe it's a little too heady for just like gore hounds.
That's what I was thinking. But like general audiences, I feel like it's a little too heady. Like, wait, it's a nightmare movie, but they're playing themselves. Wait, what? Like, and again, it also came out at a time when there was Pulp Fiction and Forrest Gump was probably still playing. Like, there were a lot of people, and it's funny. I feel like the audience that went to Pulp Fiction probably was the same audience for this.
I would have, had I been, the age I am now. That would have been a busy weekend for me.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure.
So.
And, Ebert gave it a 3-star glowing review and admitted that he didn't like other shit in the franchise.
Yeah, but he was like, I was really intrigued by this one and how it focused on the people that make horror movies and their demons.
Yeah.
I don't know. It definitely holds up for me. I thought it was very smart. And again, I think I'm a sucker for the premise alone. I'm very intrigued by, meta things and movies about movies in a certain way, just because I obviously love movies and but I found this one to be very inventive and clever,
I agree.
It definitely still holds up for me.
I think there's enough going on here that even if you're not enamored with like the industry, I think you'll be surprised
you'll still enjoy it,
how much you'll like this.
I agree.
To me, that I don't know if this is necessarily true or it's just how I feel, but this is a movie that deserves some love. This deserves some champion.
I agree. I think it's the best. I mean, look, I've only seen the original and this one, but I imagine those are the two, not only best ones, but probably the two that are like the most worth watching.
3, I'll throw 3 in there. 3's pretty good.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen it, but yes, I imagine that people would say that too.
And the other ones have moments. It just depends on your kind of mileage with this kind of thing. But this one, we talk a lot about the rotation and if things are going into it. And this is an easy add to the Halloween horror movie rotation for me. So
100%.
Yeah, 100%. Put it in the queue. It's a little off the beaten path. Show it to your friends. I think this is a fun one, and definitely still good.
I agree. It's definitely still a fun one. So there you have it, guys. 2 pretty resounding yeses that Wes Craven's New Nightmare is still good. We miss Wes. He died, God, what was it, 5 years ago now?
It feels more recent than that. I
think it was 2015. I could be wrong, though.
You're right.
Which is just shocking because he was 76. He wasn't old, or at least not that old. But, he was really one of the greats. And this also feels very personal to him, which I like. Like, again, that scene with him and Heather where he's being very fatherly to her is really cool. But yeah, so this is definitely Still Good. Shoot us an email, stillgoodshow@gmail.com. You can check us out, stillgoodshow.com, our website. Instagram at stillgoodshow. And we will see you next week for our third entry in the Halloween month series. So enjoy, go watch New Nightmare, and we'll see you next time.
Spooky.
Spooky.